So today's video is about a perfumer who has created over 200 fragrances in the last 20 years, and also someone who has her own niche brand that she created before the age of 40. It's Sonia Constant. So if you haven't seen me before, I'm Claire, and I've been making a series of videos profiling perfumers, talking about their lives and also discussing their most famous creations. I've already profiled 6 other perfumers in this series, so I'm going to leave a link to those videos down below in the description box, and I'll also leave a link to the playlist. But if you don't want to miss out on future profile videos, then please do consider subscribing, and please also press the like button if you do enjoy this kind of content. Today's video is going to be all about Sonia Constant. So Sonia Constant was born in 1978 and grew up in the Paris suburb of Saint-Germain-en-Laye. Sonia says that her first scent memories are the scent of her mother's fragrances. Her mother really liked Rose Chypre fragrances, so she particularly remembers Paloma Picasso's Paloma Picasso and also Van Cleef & Arpels' first fragrance. She also says that she particularly associates the smell of fresh cut grass with her childhood and also the smell of the lawnmower on Sundays. Constance says that her family state that her first word was fleur, flower, and that really as a child she was obsessed with gardens and flower shops. She always liked being in nature and smelling nature. When asked about the first fragrance that she ever wore, Sonia says that she actually stole her mother's fragrance. So the first fragrance that she wore was Van Cleef & Arpels' first. Ironically, in 2008, Sonia Constant would even go on to make a flanker of that fragrance. But Sonia also highlights that her first proper fragrance was Chanel's Allure. Constant is rather unusual in the world of perfumery in that the rest of her family are not perfumers. They're not associated with the perfume industry. She says that before she thought of becoming a perfumer, she thought of being a ballet dancer or an architect or a clothes designer, making her dreams sound very similar to those of Francis Kurkdjian. Constance says that she wasn't really aware of perfumery as an option. She wasn't aware of the role of the perfumer. And it was really reading a book by the perfumery school ISIPCA that really let her know that perfumery was an option. And that perfumery school was where Sonia ended up applying to. Sonia Constant's course was split between this institute and also working at Givaudan's perfumery school. Constance states that at the institute she was taught by Dominique Ropion and also by Francis Kurkdjian. And at Givaudan Perfumery School, she interacted with Olivier Pecheur. She then continued for a further 3 years, and then she joined the fine perfumery team at Givaudan. And that team included Christine Nagel, her sister-in-law at the time, and also Antoine Lee. So which was Sonia Constant's first fragrance? Well, this took a bit of finding, but I found an article where she specified that her first fragrance was one for a small French brand called S. Oliver, who are probably better known for making other things other than fragrance. I think they're a clothing brand. Anyway, this fragrance was called Sports One Female, and it was released in 2006, and it's described as a sweet orange scent. Throughout the initial period of her career, Constant worked for relatively small perfume brands. One of her earlier commissions was that she created a fragrance for Tocca entitled Brigitte. This seemed to be quite a divisive fragrance. It was a rhubarb and ginger fragrance with a powdery floral aspect to it. Also relatively early on in 2009, she created a fragrance for Guerlain's Acqua Allegoria line called Tiare Mimosa. One thing that I found to be really interesting when I looked at Sonia Constant's output and looked at how the fragrances are described was that she'd made a flanker fragrance of the Vanderbilt line, the Gloria Vanderbilt line. So she created Miss Vanderbilt for that line in 2010. And when I looked at how that fragrance is described, a lot of people are comparing that fragrance to Chanel Allure, her own first fragrance. They describe it as a powdery vanilla. And that makes me think that perhaps Sonia's own love of that fragrance may have inspired that creation. Other early creations include some of the initial fragrances for the Liquide Imaginaires line. The first 2 that she formulated were Fortis and Sancti, released in 2011. But more recently she created Fleuve Tendre and also Serenis. I think all 4 are considered to be more male-orientated fragrances, But I think her most famous creation for the brand is perhaps Dom Rosa, which is described as a red wine kind of fragrance, and I think it's the champagne and the rose that give that impression. In 2014, she continued making male-marketed designer fragrances, this time making Mont Blanc's fragrance Emblem, which is a cinnamon and violet leaf fragrance with a grapefruit-laden opening. This fragrance created a small ripple in the world of male designer fragrances, but really it was her later work, beginning in 2015 for Tom Ford, that set her career on the path to stardom. In interviews, Sonia describes this period of being in the fragrance wilderness as down to her being a woman. She says that when you're a woman, you have to double prove your own talent, saying that you have to be 2 times bigger than men to exist. She says that she feels that when she left perfumery school, the doors opened very rapidly for her male colleagues, while she had to grow little by little, working on smaller projects, which she found very difficult. The 2015 launch of the fragrances for Tom Ford that she'd formulated, though, really started it all. So she created the new Tom Ford Noir pour Femme and also Noir Extreme. I own Noir pour Femme, and both of these fragrances use the core notes of the cardamom, the coffee and the vanilla to make something that smells unique. Both of these fragrances have a deliciousness about them. They both have a very creamy vanillic dry down with quite a citrusy, gingery in this case, opening, along with a lot of texture and sandalwood. I think Noir pour Femme is really something that stands out. It's a gorgeous winter fragrance, and I can totally see why this one really helped to get her name out there. Constant has been quoted as saying that she has little regard for rules when she is formulating fragrances, and she states that when she started in perfumery, she particularly remembers Olivier Pescher calling her up on the amount of cardamom she was putting in certain fragrances, saying that she was crazy. It may be that those initial trials and experiments enabled her to create the standout fragrances of Noir Extreme and Noir pour Femme. Sonia has also been quoted as saying that she values mistakes, and she gives the example of when she was creating L'Éclat d'Arpège for L'Envol. She says an assistant made a mistake with a trial and added 10 times the amount of violet leaf that she'd specified. She says surprisingly that trial turned out to be the best version of the fragrance. So in 2015, alongside the Noir line, Constant also worked on some fragrances for Valentino. She launched the Donna line with the initial EDP. I used to own this one, and it's a powdery iris and rose fragrance with a very, very slight and very subtle undertone of a powdery leather. I think this fragrance has now been reformulated and perhaps even discontinued, but overall the fragrance is a Rose Chypre, and I think people tend to get confused between the Valentino Donna and the Valentino Donna Born in Roma line, and they are 2 very different things. Donna Born in Roma is very, very syrupy and sweet, and Valentino Donna is just not that. Understandably, after the success of the Noir line for Tom Ford, she again worked for Tom Ford a year later, creating one of my absolute favourite fragrances. This time, it was a flanker fragrance of the Black Orchid line. This one was Orchid Soleil. So this is really a standout fragrance for me because of the chestnutty vanilla dry down. It's a stunningly delicious fragrance in the dry down, and it also features one of her favourite flowers, spider lily. So apart from this fragrance, Sonia Constant also created a few other Tom Ford fragrances over the years, and most notably, her most famous creation now is Ombre Leather. Ombre Leather was originally launched as a private blend fragrance and then relaunched as a separate line. It's as a separate line that it became super successful. Again, Ombre Leather features her signature kind of powdery feel alongside cardamom, but really the fragrance is hyper-focused on the leather note. The leather note is the star. The original Ombre Leather became a bestseller for Tom Ford, and 3 years later they launched the equally successful Ombre Leather Parfum, which Sonia Constant also created. So 2017 brought 2 huge shifts to Sonia Constant's career, and she also formulated a bit of a sleeper hit as well. The sleeper hit was a fragrance that she created for Viktor & Rolf's pseudo niche line, and that was Dancing Roses. Dancing Roses features notes of lychee, rose and cherry, and it gives off an almost effervescent cherry liqueur kind of smell. It was really the most popular of the entire line from Viktor and Rolf, and sold out and became sought after pretty quickly. So the first big change for Sonia Constant in 2017 was that she took over her now ex-sister-in-law's role at Narciso Rodriguez. She took over formulation of the For Her line, and from now on she would formulate, I think, pretty much all of the flankers of that line. So beginning with the very beautiful Fleur Musc and proceeding through Pure Musc, and also with the ginormous commercial success of Musc Noir Rose. In interviews, Constant has talked of her immense respect for Narciso Rodriguez and what he's tried to achieve with the brand. And she's discussed her worry over formulating his fragrances and being true to his vision with his love of Egyptian musk. And it's clear that her arrival as the new perfumer for this line was meant to signal a little bit of a modernisation for the For Her line, which was already established for over 10 years before she arrived. Secondly, and perhaps more importantly for Sonia Constant, she launched her own label of niche fragrances, Ella K. The initial launch of Ella K encompassed 7 fragrances, and the most popular of the initial launch, I think, was Lettre de Pushka, which is a warm, sweet, spicy, ambery rose. When Constant launched her Ella K brand in 2017, she was the only mainstream conglomerate perfumer with her own brand. And she says that she was inspired by Francis Kurkdjian and his work to create his own line and his success. Constant points out that the pressure with your own line is immense. She says that when you create your own brand, if it's unsuccessful, it's your fault because you're the perfumer and you're the creative director. She says it's all on you and you have to be very strong and very resilient. Interestingly, Ella K is named after a woman called Ella Meillat. She was a pioneering traveller and journalist. And Sonia says that her brand is really inspired by travel. It's inspired by the places that Sonia has been, but it also reflects the places of where inspiring women of the past, so for example Amelia Earhart, also travelled. So for example, Orchid K was inspired by Lake Como in Italy, and also Amber K was inspired by a trip to South America. The brand's biggest success to date, though, is without doubt Musc K, launched in 2023. This is a very likeable, bright, clean iris musk that feels very modern and really echoes some of her work with Narciso Rodriguez. If you choose to look more into Ella K's fragrances, you will see personal stories sometimes associated with some of the fragrances that have been developed for the brand by Sonia. One notable story is the story of Amber K. So she describes this fragrance, as I've said, as being about a trip to South America. And she says that she made this trip alone and she had just broken up with her boyfriend at the time. She says the fragrance is inspired by the smell of his skin and the fact that she was missing the smell of his skin. She combined that smell with tobacco and cigars and one of her favourite notes, spider lily, a white floral that reminds her of vanilla and cocoa. She says that she wanted a fragrance that was very sensual and told the story of a woman who was sad because she was missing her partner but felt resilient and faithful. She describes the smell of her former partner's skin as being buttery, like a croissant. She says it's buttery and sweet because he doesn't smoke or drink. And she says that's what she was trying to capture in that fragrance. So just as a postscript to that fragrance, Sonia Constant did get back with that boyfriend that inspired that fragrance. So it's a happy ending. So which fragrances does Sonia choose to wear nowadays? It's clearly not Chanel Allure. So Sonia says that she's often testing fragrances and of course they have priority as the fragrance that she will wear. She says she's always testing fragrances for her own brand but also for other brands, and she always revisits particular favourites from her own line. Her own favourites, she states, are Camellia K, Orchid K and Musc K. Clearly over the last 8 years since 2017, Sonia Constant's time has been split between her own brand and also her other work for other brands, but her focus has been mainly on Ella K, and her output has reduced for other brands. but she has collaborated with a number of other perfumers to create other fragrances. So particularly on the designer market, there are some hits that really stand out from this time period. And it really begins with La Belle for Jean-Paul Gaultier, along with Beau, alongside Quentin Biche, and also Angel Nova alongside Louise Turner and also Quentin Biche, again echoing her own use of lychee and rose in fragrances such as Dancing Roses. Recently, she's also been involved in formulating a fragrance for Marc Jacobs, Daisy Wild, and has continued her work for the French perfumery Fragonard. So how can we sum up Sonia Constant's attitudes to perfumery? There's a really interesting quote from Sonia Constant where she's talking about being rejected when pitching for a fragrance for Dior. She says that Dior said that she was too creative and they didn't want her fragrance, and she was really upset. And then she said that she spoke to Christine Nagel and she was assured that actually this is a compliment, this is a good thing, that they didn't want your fragrance. And I think perhaps that experience has instilled in Sonia that actually doing your own thing is probably the better thing. And that experience may have inspired her in some very small part to create her own brand. Constant also says of fragrance that she really has no grounding in chemistry, and she sees perfumery as more of an artistic endeavour than a scientific one. Sonia Constant also has a little list of her favourite ingredients, and she lists right at the top of the list, surprisingly, ambroxan. So, for example, in her Amber K fragrance, she used Amberfix, which is basically the Givaudan version of ambroxan. But she lists ambroxan because she says that it's like a black and white photograph. She says it doesn't date as an ingredient. Sonia Constant also says that she really values cashmere. She describes cashmere as a rock star ingredient. She says that she smells it and imagines a beautiful woman wearing leather trousers. Sonia also lists a few other ingredients as her favourite, and you might be able to guess at least a few of these. So Spider Lily is definitely one of her favourites, alongside Iris or Orris. And she says that she likes the suede-like texture of Iris and Orris and likes to use it in a very modern way. She also specifically highlights orange flower because she likes the gourmand aspect of orange flower. She likes the way you can make it more marshmallowy depending upon how you pair it with other notes. So I think we can see this use of her favourite notes throughout her fragrance creations, but I really am surprised not to see rose here too, because I feel like rose is something that she's used repeatedly in some of her most popular and most successful fragrances. So what does the future hold for Sonia Constant? Well, she's still quite a young perfumer. She's under 50 still, and she's already produced one fragrance in 2026, a new Narciso Rodriguez flanker, Pure Musc Blanc. I would guess in 2026 that we'll see at least another LK fragrance, and perhaps also another designer offering in collaboration with some other Givaudan perfumers. So please do let me know if you have a favourite creation from Sonia Constant. Maybe she's your favourite perfumer. Maybe you own one of the fragrances I've featured in this video. Maybe you think I should have highlighted another creation by her. I'd love to know your thoughts. So please also, if you have enjoyed the video, then please do press the like button. And also consider subscribing if you haven't done already. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.